This is The Big Breakdown, a long look back at some of the biggest stories we're covering for you at the Hidden Killers Podcast and True Crime Today. This is Hidden Killers Live with Tony Bruschi, Stacey Cole, and Todd Michaels.
The prosecution's entire case here in the au pair affair murder trial that's getting underway of Brendan Banfield, it comes down to one person, Juliana Peres Magalhaes. She spent a year in jail facing second-degree murder charges. Then she changed her story, took a plea deal for manslaughter with time served, and agreed to testify against the man she allegedly helped commit double murder. She gets to go home to Brazil. All she has to do is say what prosecutors need her to say. But here's the thing. From a jail cell, she wrote to her mother, and she was heartbroken for what she was doing to Brendan, that she still loved him. So how does the jury weigh testimony from a witness whose freedom depends entirely on conviction? Jennifer Coffendaff, a retired FBI special agent, is here to help us break all that down. The sentencing is scheduled for after Banfield's trial. This is the scheduling for Juliana, meaning nothing or go back to Brazil to ensure that she continues to cooperate. I mean, essentially, that means to ensure that she continues to say what we want her to say. If she doesn't say what we want her to say, they could say you're not going back home. I mean, this, again, this doesn't feel like the free will of a witness in a case like this when you're holding literally her future in front of her.
And Tony, that happens every day in every investigation from the standpoint of we get witnesses that are jailhouse snitches. We get witnesses. Look, you can't get choir boys to talk about gangbanging or to talk about murders, right? It's people who have their hands dirty in one way or the other in terms of the crime, because those are the witnesses to them, right? So you have to take into account, in my opinion, how does she hold up on the stand? How does she do in terms of what she said? It's always a problem when you have anyone change anybody in their testimony. I mean, for me, geez, it's tough. I mean, you start discounting what they have to say for me, not because of what you're talking about in terms of the, going back to Brazil or they get a sentence reduction. But basically what I'm looking at is, well, you lied here. Are you lying here? Are you lying, the whole time? So I think that's the biggest problem. And the jury's going to have to make that determination. I think many of us will be watching that testimony to see what we think.
Yeah.
I mean, and they got, they obviously have talked to her before going into trial. I mean, I don't know how strong they believe their case is, or how many blinders they have on, considering the amount of investigators who've been kicked off the case because their findings didn't jive with the theory of the case. How do you, I mean, and not necessarily talking in this case, but just more in general, how do you distinguish between a cooperator who's finally telling the truth because they want to tell the truth versus one who's saying whatever gets them out?
It's really very simple. It has to do with, can I corroborate the statements from independent facts? That's what the litmus test should be for all investigators. Anybody can sing a song and dance, but does that song and dance match up with your facts that you have in your case?
Sure. I'm trying to piece this together in my mind because I am disturbed by the investigative work on this. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily believe that they're innocent, but it does raise some red flags. And I'm trying to parse that out in my mind. Let's just go down the road here for a moment of, okay, the investigators did figure out that it was the wife, the deceased wife, that was on FetLife, and maybe she was communicating with these people and was having these affairs or whatever. Let's just pretend that that's reality for a moment. Maybe it was. How do we get to where we got today? How does she end up dead? Is it basically exactly what they said they did as being reality, that this man with no criminal record who's living, I believe he was like living at home with his mom or something. I mean, the mom has all these lovely things to say about little Norman Bates or whatever his name is. And the way that their relationship was and how he was, and he was very calm and this or that, but he's showing up for a rape fantasy off of a website. So I got to question, just how stable the man is to begin with. But is that the answer? Is it, well, he showed up with the intent to kill her, and he was going to kill her, and he was killing her, and luckily these guys showed up and killed him too. Unfortunately, he killed her first. Is that just the storyline? Because it doesn't match up extremely well to the blood spatter and such as well.
No, it doesn't match up. And look, I think, from what I know of this case, that they likely have the right scenario, but it is concerning in terms of this digital analysis. That's probably my biggest concern. But I will say, what other digital analysis was done? Are they going to have another expert that's going to replace the other expert that sees it a different way? I have not seen that evidence. Have you?
Mm-hmm. I have not. I don't know what that's going to be, or if it exists or whatnot. Because I am curious. Because you got to look at it from the other direction too. Maybe there's some validation behind those people within the department who said, "You're never going to do this analysis again." Maybe they looked at it and went, "This is a shit report. Your methods, the way you did this, are not up to snuff. So yes, you did come to this conclusion, but the way you got there, we don't believe." Maybe they'll be able to come back and say that. I don't know the answer to that question yet, but it is alarming when you have multiple investigators on this case all getting booted because what their conclusions allegedly seem to have been did not follow what they want to put into this neatly wrapped box. Sometimes we do see this where the conclusions don't necessarily fit into the neatly wrapped box, but the prosecution isn't, I don't know, I want to say creative enough, or I don't know what the word I'm looking for here is, but they don't have enough to present it in any other way than the way that they've been saying it over and over. And it doesn't mean that their theory isn't true. It's just they're not able to roll with the punches enough to continue to go down the road in an effective manner. And then they start creating these things that raise red flags, that raise questions of credibility and accountability.
Well, I feel like there's so much that we haven't seen, right? We're at the beginning stages, and I really want to see where this really takes us. I know what you're saying. There's concerns with people not being on the case that perhaps had different theories, and then you combine that with the digital analysis that was done that doesn't pair up because of who purportedly committed these searches. But like you said, how well of work did he do? What's his background and credentials in terms of, has he made mistakes in the past? What were his methods? And is there anybody that's going to come up and refute him for a particular reason? I mean, remember the 227 search? How long to die in snow? And then it turned out that was just when the browser was opened.
Yeah.
At 227, not when the search was conducted. So it's so critical to, I think, when you get into digital analysis, is to really understand the methods and the expertise of the individual conducting the searches.
Yeah, I mean, there's room for a lot of nuance here, without a doubt, and that's it's important to go into this thing, I think, with an open mind and not just 100% in this way, because there is some weird stuff going on here, and if all we're doing is maybe we do call out some bad behavior of the investigators, but it doesn't necessarily mean either that Brendan is innocent and Juliana is innocent either. The defense, of course, is going to be hammering Juliana's credibility. Does this trial, at the end of the day, obviously they're going to have a lot of witnesses on the stand. They're going to have this expert and that expert, and they're going to pound it from both ways. Does it all, though, pretty much come down to Juliana's testimony and how she delivers and how she delivers it and how credible she comes across to that jury?
I think that's going to be a huge part of it. The jurors are either going to take her one way or the other. Is it possible they could completely discount her credit or her testimony? That's even possible. And then now you're down to blood spatter evidence and the evidence from the scene. And I'm interested in all the details that they're going to have that show the web being woven. I want to see what all of those details come out, because at the end of the day, you're going to want to show this motive because you believe in that motive. If the jurors believe the motive, then the jury will likely convict.
It feels like there's a lot of room for a reasonable doubt on this one. It really, more than I thought initially digging into it. And now that we're here and I've really dug a lot more, it's like, yeah, this isn't as clear cut as it just seems on the surface. There'll be a lot. There'll be a lot that will come out, and we'll bring it to you right here. Jennifer Coffendaff, a retired FBI special agent, as always, thank you for coming on and giving us your insight into all of these cases. We'd love to get your thoughts as well. Be sure to put your thoughts in the comment section of the videos on YouTube, or join our Substack, hiddenkillers.substack.com. The link is in the description as well. Be sure to weigh in. It's absolutely free right now to join our Substack. Everything is free, no paywall. You can even get our stories a day before they land everyone else. So please do check that out and join us there, and communicate directly with us in the studio on the Substack. Until next time, for Todd and Stacy and Jennifer, I'm Tony Bruschi. We'll talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast. This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
The trial of Brendan Banfield, the au pair affair murder trial, it's gotten off to pretty much a breakneck speed. We already had the beginning of the au pair on the stand, and there is more to come as of this recording. We're going to break down what happened on day one of this trial, and I want to get your thoughts on all of this crazy case, because there's so many possibilities and directions. The jury has their work cut out for them. That is for sure. But give me your thoughts in the comments section on YouTube as we go through this, or on our Substack channel. You can interact directly with us here in the studio in Substack, meaning your messages go right to me, so I will see them. You can check that out. The link is in the description, hiddenkillers.substack.com. It's on the bottom of your screen right now if you're watching on YouTube. So 2 ways to interact and give us your thoughts. All right, you ready? You ready to get into this, into the day one breakdown of the trial of Brendan Banfield? There's a lot. According to prosecutors, these are the instructions Brendan Banfield sent to Joseph Ryan, posing as his wife weeks before Ryan's death. Quote, "The door will be unlocked. Christine will be asleep in bed. Come straight upstairs, cut off the clothing, tie her, essay her. Simple and fun." Is how it was worded. Simple and fun. Right after the words "are her." Okay. That's what Joseph Ryan thought he was walking into the morning of February 24th, 2023. A consensual fantasy with a woman he'd been chatting with on a fetish website for weeks. A scenario they discussed in detail. He was told to bring a knife, zip ties, and chains. He was told not to stop, even if she looked terrified, even if she screamed, even if she called for help. That's what she wanted. That's what made it real for her. That's allegedly what was communicated in messages leading up to what went down. Except, according to prosecutors, none of it was real. Joseph Ryan wasn't meeting Christine Banfield that morning. Prosecutors allege he was walking into a kill room, basically, one that had been carefully constructed over months by her husband and the family's live-in au pair. Today, the murder trial of Brendan Banfield continues, and yesterday in Fairfax County, Virginia, the woman who says she helped him execute the plan, the woman who admits she fired one of the shots that killed Joseph Ryan, took the stand and told the jury everything. Let me tell you who these people are, in case you're just starting to get into this trial going, what is this all about? Yeah, I know. Brendan Banfield was a criminal investigation agent for the IRS, a federal law enforcement officer, trained, armed, credentialed. His wife, Christine Banfield, was an ICU nurse and, by all accounts, a dedicated healthcare worker and mother. They had a 4-year-old daughter. And living in their home in Herndon, Virginia, a quiet suburb about 30 minutes outside of Washington, D.C., was a young woman from Brazil named Juliana Peres Magalhaes. She was in her early 20s when she moved in. She was there to help take care of the child and I guess help take care of Brandon, too. And herself, because they had an affair. Now, obviously, affairs don't make people murderers, but that's a key piece of the whole story. By August of 2022, Juliana and Brendan Banfield were having an affair. That's not disputed by either side. What happened next is the center of the trial. According to Juliana's testimony, by October of 2022, just 2 months into the affair, Banfield was already telling her he wanted to, quote, get rid of his wife. Not leave her, not divorce her, get rid of her. He allegedly told Juliana that divorce wasn't an option. He didn't want to pay. He didn't want lawyers involved. And most importantly, he didn't want to share custody of their daughter. He wanted full control. I'm sure he made a lovely IRS agent. Juliana testified that Banfield told her Christine was a terrible mother, that she didn't deserve the child, that he wanted to be with Juliana instead, and that the only way to make that happen was to remove Christine from the picture entirely. According to Juliana, that's when they started planning. In January of 2023, Magalhaes testified she and Banfield created a fake email address, and then they created a profile on a website called FetLife, a social networking site for people interested in BDSM, kink, and fetish lifestyles. The profile was in Christine's name. It used her identity. It was designed to look like Christine Banfield was seeking out a specific kind of encounter, SA-type fantasy, to be carried out by a stranger. But here's a detail that matters. According to prosecutors, they used Christine's laptop to do it, and they made sure to only log in when Christine was physically home. Magalhaes testified that Christine, after long shifts at the hospital, would come home and toss her backpack with her laptop inside by the door. She never knew they were using it. She never knew her identity was being stolen, and according to Juliana, that was the point. He always made sure for us to make sure to log in on the account when she was home, she told the jury. So be very clear that whenever she was using the profile, she was home. Prosecutors alleged they were building a digital alibi. If anyone ever looked at the login records, it would appear that Christine herself was the one running the account, that Christine was the one reaching out to strangers, that Christine was the one inviting a man into her bedroom for a violent encounter. According to the prosecution's theory, it was a frame job from the start. Over the next several weeks, Magalhaes said that Banfield, posing as his wife, began vetting candidates, men who responded to the profile, men who were interested in the scenario. According to Juliana, they were looking for someone specific, someone aggressive, someone who would follow instructions, someone who could be blamed. According to testimony, they found Joseph Ryan. Ryan was a 39-year-old man from Springfield, Virginia. He had no prior connection to the Banfields, no relationship with Christine, no reason to be in that house. But according to prosecutors, Brendan Banfield spent a month cultivating him, posing as Christine, messaging him on the fetish site, setting up the terms of what Ryan believed would be a consensual encounter. Prosecutors allege Ryan was told to leave his phones in his car. He was told the front door would be unlocked. He was told Christine would be asleep in bed. He was told to go straight upstairs, restrain her, and not stop no matter what, even if she looked terrified, even if she begged him to stop. That was part of the fantasy. What Ryan didn't know, what prosecutors say he couldn't have known, was that he wasn't being invited. He was being lured. And in the morning of February 24th, 2023, according to prosecutors, Brendan Banfield disabled the lock on his front door. Then he left the house and drove to a nearby McDonald's, close enough to return quickly when signaled. Juliana stayed behind with the couple's 4-year-old daughter. When Joseph Ryan arrived at the house and went upstairs to the master bedroom, Juliana testified that she called Banfield. That was the bat signal to come back, and he did. What happened next, according to Juliana's testimony, is this. Banfield came into the house through the basement. He brought their daughter downstairs with Juliana and told them to wait. Then he went upstairs, armed with his IRS-issued service weapon. Juliana testified that she followed carrying a firearm that Banfield had purchased for her a month earlier. She told the jury he had taken her to a shooting range at least twice before that morning, and she knew how to use it. According to Juliana, they entered the bedroom together. She testified that Joseph Ryan was there holding Christine down, just as he'd been instructed, and Brendan Banfield walked in, announced himself as a police officer, and shot Ryan in the head. Ryan fell, but Christine was still alive. Banfield then allegedly picked up the knife that Ryan had brought, the one he'd been told to bring as part of the fantasy, and then used it to stab his wife repeatedly in the neck. Juliana described it on the stand. She said she ran to the other side of the bed. She crouched down. She covered her ears. She covered her eyes. But she looked. She said she saw him stabbing her. A few times I looked, she testified, and I was able to see him stabbing her. When it was over, according to Juliana, Ryan was still moving. She testified that Banfield told her to shoot him again, and she did. The second bullet entered Ryan's chest. Then prosecutors alleged they staged the scene. At 7:47 a.m., Juliana called 911, but according to her testimony, she hung up immediately at Banfield's direction before saying anything. The dispatcher called back and left a voicemail. No one had answered. 15 minutes later at 8:02 a.m., Juliana called 911 again. This time she was frantic, stuttering, gasping. She told the dispatcher that her friend had been stabbed and was bleeding badly. She couldn't get the address out. She could barely form sentences. Then Brendan Banfield took that very phone. He identified himself by name. He told them he was a federal agent, and then he said, stuttering at times, "There's somebody here. I shot him, but he stabbed her. She's bleeding. She's got several marks on her neck. What do I do?" He presented himself as the hero, the husband who came home just in time, the man who shot an intruder to save his wife but couldn't save her in time. A tragedy, a home invasion gone wrong. Police arrived at the house in the 13,200 block of Stablebrook Way in the master bedroom. They found Christine Banfield dead from the stab wounds. Joseph Ryan was nearly dead from gunshot wounds. The 4-year-old daughter in the basement, her jacket zipped up, backpack on her shoulders, ready to go to the zoo. That's what she was told. And on Brendan Banfield's nightstand in a frame was a photograph of him and Juliana Peres smiling. Prosecutors have pointed to that photo as evidence of the relationship between the two. So that's the prosecution's case. A federal agent who allegedly wanted out of his marriage without paying for it, an affair with the au pair, a fake profile, a man lured to his death. 2 bodies, a staged crime scene, a cooperating witness, a blood evidence that prosecutors say will prove Banfield was standing over his wife when she died. My God. And if that's true, my God. I mean, just for a second, think of yourself if you were his wife, if you were Christine. You are thinking, oh my God, this guy just broke into the house. He's been doing these horrible things to me, tying me up. Thank God my husband has shown up. Your husband shoots him, and you're thinking, oh God, okay, my knight in shining armor is here. And then he stabs you to death. Those last few moments, utter betrayal. Utter betrayal. Who even knows if she was able to connect the dots in the shock and trauma that her brain must have been going through at that moment in time of, oh God, he's part of this. It's so he can be with her. I don't know. No one can know what was going on in her mind, but oh my God. Well, the defense says that's not what happened. We're going to get into here what the defense says now. And as we do, if you've not done so already, your thoughts in the comment section on YouTube or on our Substack, hiddenkillers.substack.com. The link is also in the description, and it's free to join right now, by the way. You also can get access to all of our videos about a day before they go public everywhere else, and they're commercial free for a limited time. Everything there, free in advance. Join. Check it out on Substack. All right. So defense attorney John Carroll gave his opening statement, and he did not hold back. Carroll told the jury that a Fairfax County Police digital forensic examiner, a man named Brendan Miller, analyzed Christine Banfield's devices after the killings. His conclusion, Christine was the one communicating with Joseph Ryan on the fetish website, not Brendan. The account was hers. The conversations were hers. According to the defense, Christine invited Ryan to that house herself. Obviously, this is how you get the pushback from the prosecution saying, oh, here's how it worked. They just did it when she was home. And maybe that's true. Maybe that's how they came to that conclusion as a forensic examiner, who then got fired. Miller's findings were peer-reviewed by a team at the University of Alabama. They agreed with the examiner, with the forensic examiner. They don't necessarily agree with what's being presented by the prosecution, and we're going to hear all of that. And that's important, because if that's true, if the digital evidence shows Christine was running the account, and it wasn't so much so this story that the au pair is now giving that is 1,000% dependent on her future freedom, then there's a problem in this story. Then the entire catfishing theory falls apart, and the prosecution's case collapses with it. Here's where it gets ugly. According to the defense, investigators who didn't support the catfishing theory were removed from the case. Brendan Miller, the forensic examiner, was transferred out of the digital forensics unit in late 2024. The lead detective on the case, who also reportedly pushed back on the theory, was reassigned. A former Fairfax County commander testified that Miller's transfer was not punitive, but the defense disputes that. Carroll told the jury, in the world of digital forensic, there's a saying, digital forensics don't lie, people lie, and there's going to be plenty you see. You're going to see manipulation within the police department. That's a serious accusation. The defense is alleging that Fairfax County Police buried evidence that didn't fit their narrative and moved out anyone who disagreed. And then there's the matter of the star witness. Juliana was arrested in October of 2023, 8 months after the killings. She was charged with second-degree murder. She sat in a jail cell for a year. Then, in October of 24, she took a deal, pled guilty to manslaughter, testified against Brendan Banfield, and in exchange, prosecutors recommended she be sentenced to time served. She'd walk free and then get deported to Brazil. That's all hanging in the balance here. You say the story our way, you get to go live your life back in Brazil, a free woman. Carroll told the jury that the only reason Magalhaes was ever arrested was to flip her against Banfield, that prosecutors came to her 4 or 5 times with offers before she finally accepted, that she's a young woman far from her family, completely dependent on a system that's now using her to convict his client. I understand the situation that she's in, Carroll said. I understand the fact that she's away from home and she's young and she's dependent on people and she's also depending on the Commonwealth, and they put her in this situation and she's accepted it gladly. In other words, the defense argues she'll say whatever she has to say to stay out of prison. And if you watched her testimony at all a little bit yesterday, it's hard to understand exactly what's going on. There's so much bizarre body language between him and her. that it really does raise a lot of questions. This is not as cut and dry as it appears to be on the surface by any means. The defense is arguing that she will say whatever she has to say to stay out of prison. In day one of her testimony was somewhat of a master class on how to lead a witness by the prosecution. There was many a times, objection, Your Honor, kind of leading here. There was plenty of times where I felt it should have been called out and didn't get called out. And it's not to say that it's not the truth that she's telling. Or is it a version of the truth, designed a very specific way to sound a very specific way and take the jury down a very specific path? Or is it all true? Or is there a version of the truth here that is not coming out, that nobody is saying? I don't know. The prosecution is not backing down. Lead prosecutor Jenna Sands told the jury they don't have to take Juliana at her word. There's physical evidence. There's blood. Well, Juliana presents us with the narrative, that story that we wouldn't necessarily know, but for the details, it is the blood evidence that you can rely upon without a doubt, Sands said. The blood cannot lie, and the blood puts Brendan Banfield standing over Christine, stabbing her in the neck until she died. Does it, though? So here's where we are. After day one, a dead wife, a dead stranger, a 4-year-old who was in the house when it happened, a cooperating witness who admits she pulled the trigger and is now facing minimal consequences in exchange for her testimony, digital forensics findings that the defense claims were ignored or suppressed, investigators who were moved off the case, and a defendant who cried in court today while listening to her own 911 call. Brendan Banfield has pled not guilty. He's charged with 4 counts of aggravated murder, use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, felony child abuse, and felony cruelty. If convicted on all counts, he faces life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 13 years just to sprinkle on top. The trial is expected to last 4 weeks. We'll see. Juliana's back on the stand. The blood evidence is coming. The defense is going to try to tear it all apart, and somewhere in the middle of all this is the truth about what really happened in that bedroom. The case comes down to one question, and it's the only one that matters. Did Brendan Banfield build a kill room, lure a stranger to his death, and murder his wife to be with the au pair? Or did the prosecution build a theory first and then quietly remove anyone who got in the way of proving it? I don't know the answer yet. But we're going to find out. Your thoughts in the comments section on YouTube. Just search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi, or on our Substack channel. Join us there. I'd love to get your thoughts on this case because it is wild. The other day when we were doing a interview, a conversation, and it's up on our Substack right now if you want to watch it, with Robin Dreek, retired FBI special agent. An idea came to me. Actually, I have my notes right here from that conversation that I was writing down. I'm just throwing this out there, and you can tell me your thoughts in the comment section. Is there a version of this where there's kind of a bit of truth on both ends? And I'm not trying to speak ill of the dead. I'm just throwing it out there as a very real possibility, because you have forensic investigators who've looked at this and said she was doing this. You have the University of Alabama that backed it up and said, yeah, we agree with the forensic investigators that say it wasn't Brendan who was communicating on the FetLife site. It was his wife. Could there be a version of this where, in fact, this is an unhappy marriage? I think that's established, and I think that that's really up for debate. It appears he's having an affair. We know that. Might she have been as well? Might this have been something she was into? Might this have been something where there had been others? Might this have been something where he saw it as an opportunity? that when she has one of her partners over, he was then going to execute his plan like this, but he didn't have to be the one that was procuring the Johns to come over. I don't know. That would make more sense of the forensic findings and then exactly what happened next. It doesn't wash guilt away from anybody, but it explains some of the parts that one may look at and go, reasonable doubt. I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities here. Quite often in cases, it's not as complex as it sounds. And this case sounds insanely complex. Sometimes it is, though. I don't know. This is one that really has me completely on the fence in the middle, and we're just going to have to keep watching the evidence. Again, give me your thoughts in the comment section. Press subscribe wherever you are listening to us or watching us. We do greatly, greatly appreciate that. If you're on Apple Podcasts, if that's where you're listening to us, number one, thank you. And number two, if you have a moment, please leave us a review on the channel that you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts. That tremendously helps us in the rankings and lets other folks know that we exist and you value this reporting. So if you get some value out of this, if you're finding our reporting satisfactory, at least, please do leave us a review there on Apple Podcasts. We do greatly appreciate that, seriously. Until next time, my name is Tony Bruschi. We'll keep talking about this off the air in the chat. We'll talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.